What's going on, guys? It's your boy JFT coming at you with today's upload, and the first upload on the upload schedule. If you guys haven't read the wallpaper, I think it's called, for YouTube up above our profile picture, you will know that the schedule has now become Tuesday, Thursday guaranteed videos, and most likely a weekend stream, unless noticed on my Twitter, which you can find here. But nonetheless, we're doing a video today, and there's an idea going around ever since Scott Coker responded to this question.
I just want to be clear. You're open to UFC versus Bellator?
Absolutely. I mean, come on. We got some killers in this league, so if they want to get it on, let's do it.
Thanks.
Now, would it be a good idea to have a cross-promotional card or event between Bellator and the UFC? It would be an interesting idea. However, looking at it realistically, this is most likely never going to happen because of the UFC's portfolio. They've only ever done it once, sending Chuck Liddell to Pride to fight in their tournament. That didn't go very well, and the UFC today stays really quiet about other MMA promotions. And usually questions can come from reporters about other promotions, but rarely do we ever see UFC fighters or UFC management ever mentioning the Bellator brand. And with that said, that doesn't take away from the fun it is in discussing possible matchups and ideas for a UFC versus Bellator type card. Now, this video is going to get a look at some of the possible matchups that make sense, and I just want to mention this before we get right into the video. Thank you guys so much for the Weili Zhang video. If you haven't seen it, I'll leave an info card for it now. But man, that's done so many views, so many good comments, so many of you guys are interacting with me in that comment section below, and that's always fucking awesome. And I ask that you do the same in this video. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and a subscribe. That would mean the world, and we can keep talking MMA together, me and you, all of us. And we're also going to be streaming, whether we have streamed it or are going to stream, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. But with all that said, let's get into the video of possible matchups between the Bellator and UFC. Now, first, probably one of the most simplest and smartest matchups to make would star light heavyweights who made successful moves up to heavyweight and almost identical moves from each promotion, with the Bellator being kind of a little knockoff version. They also had beef in the UFC prior to the move. Bader being persuaded to go to Bellator for a bigger contract in 2017. Bader also didn't have a notably bad record in the UFC at 15-5. Would take on one of the best there is ever inside the UFC octagon, Daniel Cormier. However, is extremely decorated and would be a heavy favorite in this matchup for sure if it ever were to happen. DC undefeated in the octagon other than Johnny Bones Jones. The only similar matchup in these two records was between Cormier, who defeated competition that would defeat Bader, and that one similarity is Anthony Rumble Johnson. However, while DC was champion, the two actually had a run-in at a press conference, and the fight probably would have been made by now if it wasn't for Bader moving to Bellator in 2017. It probably would have happened in 2018 when John Jones wasn't here because of his scandalous behavior. But with this being said, the UFC really would have nothing to gain in this matchup. They have one an all-time great going up against Bellator's face of the promotion. The only real reason this would ever come into existence would be if the UFC had a sheer intent to embarrass the brand that's trying to make a name for itself by sending their champion to just destroy Bellator's champion. And that's the only way it would be bad for Bellator, is if Bader got absolutely obliterated. Next off is two champions again. Ilima McFarlane versus the Bullet, Valentina Shevchenko, in a matchup again favored to the UFC side by probably a pretty wide margin. It actually makes a little bit of sense here. Valentina doesn't really have many contenders at flyweight, contenders that aren't going to come out and say things like this, that they're scared to fight the champion in their division. However, McFarlane, extremely competitive, extremely dangerous. It's not really going to be that much of a fight. I'd see her having the same odds as Jessica Ai, and we all know how that went. But the competition that the UFC can get Shevchenko at women's flyweight is pretty low down there, so maybe this would be a good fight to have if the UFC could ever get their hands on Bellator's flyweight champion and one of Bellator's biggest women's stars. Moving on, world champion versus world champion once again for the third time in this video. And this is the first matchup I'm favoring Bellator. In the JFT's official Bet369 plus minus, middleweight champion of the UFC, Robert the Reaper Whittaker, and middleweight champion of Bellator, Gegard Mousasi. Now, I understand how good Robert the Reaper Whittaker is. He just went back-to-back against one of the scariest MMA fighters of all time. However, Gegard has fought for 16 years. He's only lost 5 times while having stints at heavyweight and light heavyweight. He's found a dangerous home at welterweight now, riding an 8-fight win streak. The Reaper himself is on a 9-fight win streak. This is just a fight for the undisputed middleweight champion. 2 of the best of their division, 2 of the best middleweight divisions across planet Earth indefinitely. This would be the undisputed middleweight champion, in my opinion, because the UFC has theirs and Bellator has their face that made a name for himself in the UFC as well. He was on a 5-fight win streak before he left the UFC's middleweight division, and who knows, he might even have come into contact with the Reaper, Robert Whittaker, at some point in their career as of to now. But again, Mousasi made the move to Bellator for financial purposes. And again, next up, another matchup, another champion versus champion. And we might actually see this one in the very, very near future with Chris Cyborg's contract coming to an end, probably by the end of this year, if the fight stays intact, by UFC Edmonton, the same card that Max Holloway is fighting Frankie Edgar. I believe it's UFC 241. I might be wrong on the exact number. I'm not good with that. But it's on that card, and it would be against reigning Bellator featherweight champion and Canadian Julia Budd. And this could be an extremely entertaining fight. Now on a 10-fight win streak, Julia Budd lost to Ronda Rousey and Amanda Nunes in her early career, but has now found extreme success in her tenure outside of the UFC, with Chris Cyborg coming off that loss to Amanda Nunes in the first round in one of the biggest upsets we've seen in women's MMA. This would make for a great fight, as I think Bellator is going to be in to offering Chris Cyborg a pretty financially strong deal.
Chris Cyborg mentioned this week she only has 1 fight left in the UFC. She won't test free agency. And that's a huge name. Is that someone you want to bring in?
Listen, I mean, if you're a free agent, give us a call, right? I mean, this is a Viacom-backed company, and, you know, we will take care of the fighters that move the needle for us. So
because Chris Cyborg is one of those big names in women's MMA who's been carving a path for herself ever since she debuted in her MMA career. She also has a YouTube channel, so she's a face that's very, very marketable, and it would market very well with their own featherweight champion in Julia Budd. So this is just a matchup that I'm going to predict happens in the very, very near future and would be good for Bellator to get to happen. So this is going to be the first, maybe the first one that I actually think might come to fruition in this entire video. And let's get to my 5th and final pick for Bellator versus UFC. And in the most exciting fight that just spells fireworks for myself, when I was in the process of thinking of names for this video on Bellator's side, I was thinking Bellator contenders. Who could I pick that's either fought recently for a title or is a world champion? As you've seen from my list, I have a bunch of world champions on this list. And the first name, the actual first name that came to my mind while making this video, Douglas fucking Lima. Who the heck could I put him against UFC top welterweight career? One of the savagest fighters I've seen outside of the UFC. One of the savagest fighters I've had the pleasure of watching outside of the UFC. And then I thought, who could I get from the UFC's welterweight division that maybe Dana White wouldn't be too mad sending over there to fuck up a champion if he wins the welterweight Grand Prix? And who is that other than the guy that Dana White put in there with Ben Askren for Ben Askren's first fight, one of the most well-rounded fighters the UFC has ever put out there, in ruthless Robbie Lawler, former UFC welterweight champion. He seems to not have a matchup. Tyron Woodley was supposed to have a rematch with him. Tyron Woodley pulled out, so why don't you send Robbie Lawler, pick him up, take on the winner of the welterweight Grand Prix, the favorite to win the welterweight Grand Prix, with Rory McDonald saying he's had all this Jesus stuff that he doesn't want to fight anymore, and send Robbie Lawler to get that belt from Bellator, and just remind people who the best, how better the UFC is than Bellator. Just talking about this matchup gets me hyped up, gets me slurring all my words. This would be one of the best fights that you could see in a Bellator cross promotion with the UFC. And it's one I think a lot of you guys may have underestimated, may have not even think it's blah, that you guys may not have thought of. But nonetheless, this is a fight that I know all of you guys are like, yes, that's a fight that needs to happen. And a fight that I honestly, if there was a ranking to the possibility of these matchups, if Julia Budd Cyborg's number 1, this would be number 2. If I could call Dana White and be like, hey, Dana, you should send Robbie Lawler over there to destroy the welterweight tournament winner. This guy could win a welterweight tournament and prove that he's by far the best in Bellator's welterweight division. He just defeated Bellator's fastest rising star in Michael Venom Page. And you just send Robbie Lawler in there to get the job done and bring that belt home to the UFC. What else is there for Dana to want in that? Robbie's lost a couple fights. He doesn't look like one of the best in the welterweight division. We all know that he's pretty respected and he's well ranked in that division. But man, if you send him over there and he messed up Douglas Lima, what else could you say other than, man, the UFC's just leagues apart? But that does it for my list. I want you guys to get in that comment section below and tell me what your list would be. Who would you want to see fighting each other between the UFC versus Bellator? And hey, in the comments, if you really want to spend some time, why don't you put a full fight card for me in that comment section below? But that'll do it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to smash that like button and join me for the next one. But that'll do it. Thank you and peace.